What if the stones themselves could speak? Hidden within the walls of ancient Templar churches and fortresses, there are whispers of a secret language, one not written in ink, but carved into the very bones of their architecture. The Knights Templar, those legendary warrior monks who wielded both sword and sacred knowledge, left behind more than just crumbling ruins. They embedded their deepest mysteries into the arches, the carvings, even the alignment of their buildings. And if you know where to look, these symbols tell a story far darker, far more arcane than anything recorded in history books. Picture this: you're standing in the shadow of a 1,000-year-old chapel, its walls etched with strange markings, a pentagram hidden in the tracery of a rose window, a labyrinthine pattern that mirrors celestial constellations, or a grotesque face peering down with knowing eyes. These aren't random decorations. They're deliberate, calculated part of a coded system that points to something the Templars dared not speak aloud. Some say these symbols guard esoteric wisdom, lost alchemical secrets, forbidden astronomical knowledge, or even clues to treasures beyond gold. Others believe they're warnings left by a brotherhood who knew their enemies were closing in. Tonight, we're stepping into their world. This isn't just about admiring medieval craftsmanship. It's about decoding a puzzle left behind by history's most enigmatic order. Every curve of a column, every hidden glyph, is a piece of a grander design, one that connects the Templars to ancient occult traditions, secret societies, and perhaps even forces beyond our understanding. So tell me, are you ready to walk through these forgotten halls with me, to see what the stones have been waiting centuries to reveal? Because what we're about to uncover isn't just architecture. It's a map to the unknown. To understand why their architecture holds such secrets, we must first step back in time, to the birth of the Templars themselves. In the year 1118, in the wake of the First Crusade, a small band of knights took a sacred vow in Jerusalem. They called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ, but history remembers them as the Knights Templar. These were no ordinary warriors. They were monks who fought, blending the discipline of the cloister with the brutality of the battlefield. Their mission: to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, a task that would soon thrust them into the heart of power, wealth, and controversy. Their rise was nothing short of meteoric. Within decades, they transformed from a handful of dedicated men into one of the most formidable forces of the medieval world. Kings and popes showered them with land, gold, and privileges. They built a vast network of fortresses, churches, and commanderies across Europe and the Levant, becoming the first multinational banking empire, lending money to monarchs and safeguarding treasures in their imposing stone vaults. But it wasn't just wealth that set them apart. The Templars operated under a shroud of secrecy, with rituals and knowledge known only to their inner circle. Rumors swirled about what they had discovered in the Holy Land: lost relics, forbidden texts, or perhaps something far older, buried beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple. Then came the fall. On Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, King Philip IV of France launched a ruthless purge, arresting Templars en masse on charges of heresy, blasphemy, and occult practices. Under torture, some confessed to bizarre rituals, idol worship, spitting on the cross, secret initiations. Others died defiant, their last words lost to history. By 1314, the order was officially dissolved, its Grand Master burned at the stake. But did the Templars truly vanish? Many believe they simply went underground, their secrets hidden in plain sight, etched into the very stones they once built. That's why their architecture fascinates us. These structures weren't just shelters or places of worship. They were coded messages, blueprints of a hidden tradition. And if we can learn to read them, we might just uncover what the Templars were so desperate to protect. The Templars didn't just build structures, they crafted silent sermons in stone, blending military precision with layers of hidden meaning. Their buildings were engineering marvels designed to withstand sieges while whispering secrets to those who knew how to listen. Take the Temple Church in London, a perfect example of their dual genius. From the outside, it's a fortress, thick walls, rounded nave inspired by the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, a deliberate echo of their sacred mission. But step inside and the geometry shifts into something sacred. The circular layout isn't just practical, it mirrors cosmic diagrams, a nod to their rumored obsession with sacred geometry and celestial alignment. Every arch, every column was a calculated choice. The Templars mastered the use of ribbed vaulting long before it became standard in Gothic cathedrals, allowing them to build taller, lighter structures that seemed to defy gravity. This wasn't just about aesthetics, it was theological engineering. The upward sweep of the arches drew the eye toward heaven, while the acoustics amplified chants and rituals, enveloping initiates in an almost supernatural atmosphere. Even the placement of windows was deliberate, designed to flood the inner sanctum with light during solstices or feast days, turning stone into a celestial clock. But the true brilliance lies in what's hidden in plain sight. Look closer at the carvings, the foliate heads, the intertwined serpents, the enigmatic green man peering from capitals. These weren't idle decorations. The Templars borrowed symbols from older traditions, Celtic, Egyptian, even Kabbalistic, weaving them into a visual language that hinted at their esoteric knowledge. In Cressac Chapel in France, frescoes depict Templar knights riding alongside ethereal figures, blending earthly warfare with spiritual guardianship. At Toma in Portugal, the Charola, their rotunda chapel, is a labyrinth of occult motifs, from 8-pointed stars to hermetic sigils, all arranged with mathematical precision. Their mastery extended to the land itself. Templar commanderies were often built atop ancient ley lines or near sacred springs, suggesting they understood something about earth energies lost to modern history. The alignment of their churches frequently mirrored constellations, particularly Orion's belt, a pattern repeated in their preceptories from France to the Holy Land. Some scholars argue this was more than coincidence. It was a map, a way to encode locations of hidden knowledge or treasures across continents. What's chilling is how much of this symbolism survived their downfall. Even after the order was dissolved, their architectural fingerprints lingered, copied by later guilds and brotherhoods. The stonemasons who built Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, for instance, included Templar motifs centuries after the order's suppression. It's as if the stones themselves refused to let the secrets die. So the next time you walk past an old Templar site, don't just admire the craftsmanship. Look for the patterns, the alignments, the symbols that don't quite fit the Christian narrative, because their greatest legacy wasn't just in what they built, it's in what they left unsaid. The Templars didn't merely construct buildings, they encoded them with a language of shapes, a silent dialogue between earth and the divine. Sacred geometry wasn't just decoration to them, it was the scaffolding of the cosmos, a way to harness unseen forces and bind them into stone. Walk into any surviving Templar chapel, and you'll find the same patterns repeating: the pentagram hidden in rose windows, the golden ratio dictating the curve of an arch, even the Fibonacci spiral unfolding in the layout of their cloisters. These weren't accidents, they were acts of devotion, a fusion of mathematics and mysticism meant to mirror the order of heaven itself. Take the pentagram, a symbol often dismissed today as mere occult flair. To the Templars, it was a map. The 5-pointed star appears subtly in their designs, etched into floor tiles, woven into ironwork, even traced by the alignment of chapels. Medieval scholars linked it to the 5 wounds of Christ, but the Templars seem to have known older secrets. In Chartres Cathedral, rumored to have Templar influence, the labyrinth center forms a pentagon when mapped, a geometric key pointing to hidden knowledge. Some speculate they inherited this symbolism from Middle Eastern mystics during their time in Jerusalem, where the pentagram was revered as a protective talisman long before Christianity. Then there's the Fibonacci spiral, nature's own blueprint. The Templars embedded this sequence where each number is the sum of the two before it into their architecture with eerie precision. In Portugal's Convento de Cristo, the spiral governs the proportions of windows and doorways, creating harmony so exact it resonates like a musical chord. This wasn't just artistic flair. The Fibonacci sequence appears in everything from galaxies to sunflower seeds, and the Templars seem to have understood its power as a bridge between the earthly and the eternal. By weaving it into their buildings, they may have been attempting to tap into the very pulse of creation. But the true masterpiece of their geometric code lies in the Vesica Piscis, the almond-shaped intersection of two circles. This ancient symbol, representing the meeting of heaven and earth, frames countless Templar altars and doorways. In Burgundy's Vézelay Abbey, the nave's dimensions form a perfect vesica, aligning with sunrise on feast days to flood the altar with light. The effect is alchemical, stone transformed into a vessel for divine energy. Even their famed round churches, like London's Temple Church, are based on this principle. The circle as a symbol of unity, eternity, and the unbroken chain of esoteric tradition. Why go to such lengths? Because for the Templars, architecture was alchemy. By shaping space with sacred geometry, they believed they could alter perception, even reality. The proportions of their buildings weren't just pleasing to the eye. They were calibrated to elevate the soul, to guide initiates toward higher states of awareness. Modern researchers have measured the acoustics in Templar chapels and found they amplify certain frequencies, creating an almost trance-like resonance during chant. The very stones seem to hum with intention, and perhaps that's the greatest mystery of all. These knights weren't just builders, they were philosophers of space, crafting environments where the boundaries between the material and the mystical blurred. Every line, every ratio was a prayer set in stone, a testament to their belief that the universe could be unlocked, one precise angle at a time. So the next time you stand beneath a vaulted Templar ceiling, look beyond the grandeur. Trace the lines, listen for the whisper of sacred shapes still speaking across the centuries. High above the altars of Templar churches, suspended like frozen explosions of light, the rose windows command attention not just for their beauty, but for the secrets woven into their delicate stone tracery. At first glance, they're masterpieces of medieval artistry, vibrant with stained glass and intricate patterns. But look deeper, and these circular marvels reveal themselves as cosmic diagrams, alchemical recipes, even portals to the divine. The Templars didn't design these windows to simply let in light. They encoded them with layers of meaning, each petal of stone and glass a page from their hidden playbook. Take the rose window at Chartres Cathedral, a site steeped in Templar influence. Its 12 petals radiate outward like the spokes of a celestial wheel, mirroring the 12 signs of the zodiac, a bold choice for a Christian edifice. This wasn't just decorative. The zodiac symbolized the harmonious movement of the heavens, a clockwork universe the Templars sought to align with through ritual and architecture. Some scholars argue the window's central motifs, often depicting the Virgin Mary, hold a subtler message. The rose's spiral patterns echo the divine feminine, a concept revered in ancient traditions long before the Church's patriarchal dominance. To the Templars, the rose may have represented not just Mary, but Sophia, the Gnostic embodiment of wisdom, or even the alchemical rosarium, a symbol of transformation and the union of opposites. Then there's the alchemical dimension. The rose window's structure often mirrors the flower of life, a sacred geometric pattern found in esoteric traditions across the world. Its overlapping circles form a blueprint of creation, believed to hold the keys to matter and spirit. Templar artisans embedded this geometry into their designs with precision. Notice how the petals intersect at precise angles, creating hidden triangles and hexagrams within the larger pattern. These shapes weren't arbitrary. Alchemists used them to represent the elements, the stages of the great work, even the philosopher's stone itself. When sunlight streams through the stained glass, casting colored prisms across the nave, it's as if the very air is charged with the promise of transmutation. Base lead into gold, the human soul into divine light. But perhaps the most startling revelation lies in the window's alignment. Many Templar rose windows are positioned to catch the sun's rays at specific times, solstices, equinoxes, or feast days tied to older pagan rites. In the Abbey of St. Denis, the rose window becomes a solar calendar, its light patterns marking the turning of the year with uncanny accuracy. Some researchers suggest these alignments weren't just ceremonial. They may have served as navigational aids, guiding initiates through spiritual seasons, or even pointing to hidden locations where Templar treasures or knowledge were stashed. The play of light and shadow across the stone floor could function as a sundial, a silent teacher for those trained to read its movements. Yet the most haunting question remains: why encode such dangerous knowledge in glass and stone? Because the Templars understood the power of symbols to transcend persecution. Burn a book and its words are lost, but carve truth into the bones of a cathedral and it survives centuries, whispering to those with eyes to see. The rose windows are more than art, they're stained glass grimoires, their colors and curves a language older than Latin, older than the church itself. And if you stand beneath one at the right moment, as the light paints the walls in hues of ruby and sapphire, you might just catch a fragment of their ancient song. The red cross emblazoned on the white mantles of the Templar Knights wasn't just a badge of faith, it was a multidimensional cipher, a symbol so dense with meaning that its true significance may have been known only to their innermost circle. At surface level, it echoed the Christian crucifix, a public declaration of their devotion. But beneath that orthodox veneer lay strata of esoteric knowledge, layers of symbolism that tied the cross to ancient cosmologies, alchemical processes, and even suppressed Gnostic truths. This wasn't merely decoration, it was a wearable manifesto, a silent proclamation of everything the Templars believed about the universe and humanity's place within it. Consider the cross's structure, not the familiar Latin shape, but the potent equal-armed version known as the cross patée. Its flared arms create a dynamic symmetry, suggesting expansion rather than suffering. Some scholars see in this design a nod to the four cardinal directions, the four elements of earth, air, fire, and water, or even the four fixed signs of the zodiac. In esoteric traditions, these quaternities represent the material world, the realm the Templars sought to master both physically and spiritually. The flaring ends might symbolize radiating energy, hinting at their rumored experiments with harnessing natural forces, perhaps even the telluric currents said to flow through their strategically placed commanderies. Then there's the color, that vivid scarlet against pristine white. Alchemists would have recognized this as the Red King and White Queen, the sacred marriage of opposites central to the great work. Medieval Kabbalists associated red with Jebura, the sphere of strength and discipline, while white represented Chizd, divine mercy, two pillars the Templars balanced in their dual role as warriors and monks. Even the fabric tells a story. Wool from the humble sheep dyed with costly Kermes insects, embodying their vow of poverty while secretly controlling vast wealth. This paradox runs through all Templar symbolism. What appears simple hides unfathomable depth. Most intriguing are the Gnostic echoes. Some heterodox Christian sects viewed the cross not as an instrument of torment but as a map of divine emanation, with the intersection point representing the spark of gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine. The Templar's cross, worn over the heart, may have symbolized this inner enlightenment, a secret carried within each knight. Certain suppressed texts describe Christ's crucifixion as an allegory for the soul's journey through matter, with the cross as the axis connecting heaven and earth. If the Templars accessed these forbidden teachings during their excavations under Temple Mount, their emblem becomes something far more revolutionary, a declaration that true salvation comes not through blind faith but through personal revelation. Perhaps the most startling interpretation comes from the geometry hidden within the cross. When its lines are extended, they form an octagon, a shape sacred to both early Christianity and Islamic mysticism, appearing in Templar baptistries and the Dome of the Rock. The octagon represents regeneration, the space between square earth and circle heaven, where transformation occurs. Some initiates claim the cross's angles encode sacred proportions that resonate with specific frequencies, turning the wearer into a living antenna for divine energy. Whether this was mystical metaphor or practical technology remains one of their most guarded secrets. What emerges isn't just a military insignia, but a Rosetta Stone of occult wisdom, merging Christianity with older mystery traditions, alchemy with sacred geometry, warfare with enlightenment. The Templars didn't just bear this cross, they became it living symbols of the intersection between the temporal and eternal. Every thread of its fabric, every angle of its design, whispers that these warrior monks knew truths too volatile to speak aloud, truths they wove into the very symbol that identified them to the world. Beneath the soaring arches and sunlit sanctuaries of Templar architecture lies another world entirely, one of shadow, stone, and whispered secrets. Across Europe, legends persist of hidden chambers buried deep beneath their commanderies, networks of tunnels snaking beneath cathedrals, and vaults sealed behind walls for centuries. These aren't just the stuff of romantic speculation. Physical evidence confirms many exist. But what were they for? The answer may lie in the Templars' most sacred and dangerous traditions. Take the underground crypt beneath the Temple Church in London, a vaulted space so acoustically precise that a whisper at one end can be heard clearly at the other. Some researchers believe this wasn't just architectural brilliance, but a deliberate design for initiation rituals. Medieval accounts describe Templar candidates undergoing trials in darkness, their vows echoing off stone as they passed through symbolic death and rebirth. The chamber's resonance would have amplified every word, every rustle of fabric, heightening the initiate's sensory experience to an almost trance-like state. Similar chambers exist in France's Cressac Chapel, where frescoes depict hooded figures conducting ceremonies, not in grand halls, but in cramped, windowless spaces lit only by flickering torchlight. Then there's the matter of what these spaces concealed. At Toma in Portugal, explorers discovered a concealed shaft beneath the charola, its walls marked with alchemical symbols pointing downward. Local folklore claims it once held a chest of white gold, not metal, but sacred knowledge, possibly manuscripts rescued from the burning libraries of the Cathars or scrolls from beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount. Even more tantalizing are the rumors surrounding Rennes-le-Château, where Templar-connected priests allegedly found something beneath the church so explosive it compelled them to alter the village's entire layout to keep it hidden. The most persistent legend, of course, involves the Holy Grail, not the chalice of popular myth, but something far stranger, a relic so potent the Templars built labyrinths to protect it. In Rosslyn Chapel, a precise alignment of pillars mirrors descriptions of the Grail's resting place in medieval romances. Beneath the chapel, ground-penetrating radar has revealed cavities consistent with a sealed chamber, though no excavation has been permitted. Could it have held the Grail, or something else entirely, an arcane device, a heretical text, or even a physical manifestation of the divine feminine venerated by the Templars' alleged inner circle? What's chilling is how these underground networks mirror older traditions. The Templars didn't invent subterranean sanctums, they adapted them. Beneath Chartres Cathedral lies a Druid-style well, suggesting the site was sacred long before Christianity. In Cyprus, Templar tunnels connect to Phoenician grain stores repurposed as escape routes. This pattern hints at a deeper truth. The order wasn't just hiding relics. They were preserving a lineage of esoteric knowledge passed down through millennia, bricked into walls or buried beneath altars. Today, some of these chambers remain stubbornly inaccessible. In Gizeh's castle, French authorities abruptly halted excavations in the 1960s after workers reported disturbances upon breaching a Templar-era wall. Others, like the vaults beneath Dom Prison where Templars were allegedly imprisoned, still bear their carved symbols, though the deepest levels are sealed with medieval cement mixed with shattered glass, as if to deter more than just human intruders. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't what these chambers held, but why the Templars went to such lengths to keep them secret. In an era when the Church wielded absolute power, their hidden spaces suggest a parallel spiritual authority, one that recognized some truths were too volatile for sunlight. So the next time you walk across the flagstones of an old Templar site, remember, the real mystery might not be in the stones you see, but in those you were never meant to find. Among the most striking features of Templar architecture are their octagonal chapels, structures that defy the traditional cross-shaped design of Christian churches in favor of an eight-sided form. This wasn't an aesthetic whim. The octagon held profound symbolic weight, a geometric bridge between the earthly and the divine. Step inside one of these spaces, like the iconic charola in Portugal's Convento de Cristo, and you'll feel the difference immediately. The symmetry pulls your gaze upward, not toward a crucifix but toward the center of the vault, where the geometry seems to hum with hidden significance. The number 8 carried layers of meaning for the Templars. In Christian tradition, it symbolized resurrection. Christ rose on the 8th day, the day beyond the week 7, marking a new beginning. But the Templars likely drew from older sources too. Ancient Babylonian cosmology revered the octagon as a representation of the celestial order, while Islamic architecture, which the Knights encountered in Jerusalem, used 8-sided designs in the Dome of the Rock, a site they knew intimately. Even nature whispered its importance. The octagon appears in the spirals of shells, the structure of certain crystals, and the double square pattern of the Merkaba, a mystical Jewish symbol of divine light. The Templars didn't just borrow this shape, they synthesized it into a key for unlocking higher understanding. Walk the perimeter of an octagonal chapel, and you'll notice how its angles align with sacred geometry. The 8 sides correspond to the 8 Beatitudes, the 8 winds of classical antiquity, even the eightfold path of enlightenment in Eastern traditions. But the real magic lies in the way these chapels interact with light. At certain times of day, often during equinoxes or solstices, sunlight enters through narrow windows, casting geometric patterns on the floor that mirror astrological charts. In Toma, the charola's alignment creates a play of shadows that traces the wheel of the year, blending Christian liturgy with pagan solar reverence. Some researchers believe these chapels were more than places of worship. They were three-dimensional mandalas, designed to guide initiates through stages of spiritual awakening. The octagon's transitional nature, neither square nor circle, represented the alchemical process of transformation, where base matter becomes gold and the soul sheds its earthly limitations. The Templars may have used these spaces for rituals that merged prayer with sacred geometry, their chants resonating against walls calibrated to amplify certain frequencies. Most compelling of all is the octagon's link to infinity. Turn the shape on its side and the symbol for eternity emerges, the lemniscate, the unbroken loop. This wasn't just decoration, it was a declaration that the Templars saw beyond the linear timeline of earthly power. Their chapels weren't built for a single era but as vessels of timeless knowledge, stones stacked to outlast empires. So the next time you stand in an octagonal space, don't just count the sides, listen for what they're trying to tell you. The walls aren't just holding up the roof. They're holding up a mirror to the infinite. The alignment of Templar buildings with celestial events wasn't accidental, it was a deliberate act of cosmic choreography. These warrior monks didn't just observe the stars, they built in conversation with them, crafting stone structures that pulsed in rhythm with the heavens. Take the Chapel of Montsons in southern France, where the winter solstice sun pierces through a narrow slit in the wall, painting a blade of light across a hidden carving of a celestial dragon. This isn't just artistry, it's a celestial clock, a reminder that the Templars saw time not as a straight line, but as a spiral, echoing the cycles of the cosmos. Their precision was staggering. In Tama, Portugal, the Charola's windows frame the sunrise on the feast of John the Baptist, a date linked to midsummer celebrations long before Christianity. The light strikes specific points on the floor, illuminating symbols that remain invisible the rest of the year. Similar alignments appear at Leon Cathedral, where the summer solstice sun aligns with a rose window to cast a starburst pattern onto the nave, transforming the space into a temporary astrolabe. These weren't just pretty effects, they were functional astronomy, a way to mark sacred time without relying on fragile manuscripts or fallible human memory. But why go to such lengths? The answer may lie in the Templars' rumored access to ancient knowledge. During their excavations beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount, they could have uncovered Babylonian star charts or Egyptian solar alignments, secrets passed down through generations of temple builders. Their architecture suggests they merged this wisdom with Christian liturgy, creating a hybrid tradition where archangels stood alongside zodiacal symbols. In Kresak, frescoes depict knights riding beneath a sky ablaze with constellations, blurring the line between heavenly host and celestial map. The most compelling evidence comes from their obsession with Orion. Multiple Templar sites from Paris to Acre mirror the three stars of Orion's belt in their layout. This constellation wasn't just a navigational aid. It was sacred to cultures from the Maya to the Egyptians, often associated with gods of resurrection. By echoing its pattern in stone, the Templars may have been attempting to ground cosmic power within their walls, turning their buildings into conduits between earthly and celestial realms. Modern laser scans of their chapels reveal subtle inclinations in the walls, corrections made to account for centuries of stellar drift, proof they planned for the long game, designing structures that would remain accurate for millennia. Perhaps the most haunting alignment is found not in sunlight but in shadow. At St. Gervais in Switzerland, a niche carved into the wall stays in darkness all year, except for the single hour of the winter solstice sunset, when a sliver of light creeps in to illuminate a relief of a veiled face. The effect lasts moments, then vanishes. It's a whisper across time, a reminder that the Templars didn't just build for their era. They built for the ages, encoding messages in stone and light, waiting for the cosmos itself to reveal their secrets to those patient enough to watch and wonder. Amidst the stern crosses and solemn saints of Templar carvings, one face keeps returning, wild, leafy, and unsettlingly alive. The green man peers from capitals and corbels, his features half hidden beneath vines that sprout from his mouth, his eyes, even his ears. This isn't the decor of a conventional Christian order. Here, in the heart of their sacred spaces, the Templars preserved a symbol with roots far older than the Church, a grinning, forest-clad whisper of the pagan world they supposedly rejected. The green man's origins stretch back to the depths of prehistory. Roman mosaics show him as Oceanus, crowned with seaweed. Celtic myths describe him as Cernunnos, the antlered lord of beasts. By the medieval period, his face had migrated into churches across Europe, a relic of nature worship too potent to erase. But the Templars didn't just tolerate him, they gave him pride of place. In the chapter house of Temple Church in London, his visage lurks beside biblical scenes, vines coiling like serpents from his lips. At St. Gilles du Gard in France, a green man shares a tympanum with Christ himself, as if the two were equals in some hidden pantheon. Why would an order sworn to defend Christian purity embrace such an overtly pagan image? Some scholars argue it was mere fashion, a popular motif borrowed from secular art. But the Templars were never casual in their symbolism. Look closer, and the green man's placement reveals a deeper pattern. He often appears near water fonts, baptismal fonts, or thresholds, liminal spaces where worlds intersect. His vines don't just decorate, they form sacred geometry, their spirals mirroring the Fibonacci sequence found in Templar floor plans. This wasn't haphazard. The green man embodied the life force, the unchecked growth that alchemists sought to harness in their quest for transformation. The key may lie in the legends surrounding the order's founding. Chroniclers wrote that the first Templars spent years excavating beneath Solomon's temple, where some believe they uncovered not gold, but secrets, perhaps even remnants of ancient Canaanite fertility cults that worshipped dying and rising gods of vegetation. The green man's leafy outbursts mirror the Templars' own mysterious rituals, like the veneration of a severed head rumored to make trees bloom. Could this symbol have been their way of encoding a heretical truth? That divinity wasn't confined to church doctrine, but pulsed through the natural world itself. Modern researchers have noticed something eerie about these carvings. At certain times of day, sunlight filters through stained glass to cast dappled shadows across the green man's face, making his foliage seem to shiver and grow. It's as if the Templars designed their spaces to animate him, blurring the line between stone and living wood. Perhaps that was the ultimate message, that their faith, like his vines, couldn't be contained, not by orthodoxy, not by persecution, not even by time. So the next time you see that leafy grin in a Templar chapel, don't dismiss him as decoration. He's not just a relic of the past, he's a challenge, a question carved in stone. What if God doesn't just live in heaven, but in the very sap of the world? Among the most enigmatic symbols carved into Templar stones, few spark as much debate as the all-seeing eye. Floating above arches, tucked into keystones, or hidden in the folds of stone foliage, this unblinking motif appears too frequently to dismiss as mere ornament. But was it a representation of God's watchful gaze, or proof the Templars operated something far more terrestrial, a medieval surveillance network spanning continents? The answer, like the symbol itself, exists in layers. On the surface, the eye fits neatly into Christian iconography. Medieval churches often depicted the eye of providence, a symbol of divine omniscience, reminding the faithful they were always observed by heaven. The Templars, as defenders of Christendom, would have embraced this idea. In the St. Anne Chapel in Normandy, the eye appears within a triangle, a clear nod to the Holy Trinity, its rays extending like beams of sacred light. But look closer and the geometry grows suspect. The triangle's angles mirror those found in Euclid's Optics, a text the Templars could have accessed through contacts in Islamic Spain. Was this just theological art, or a nod to their rumored studies of light perception and the science of seeing? Then there's the darker interpretation. The Templars weren't just monks, they were strategists who built the first pan-European intelligence network. Their commanderies functioned as way stations, relaying messages from Cyprus to England with startling speed, faster than any secular courier. Some historians suggest the all-seeing eye symbolized this system, a silent boast that the order's reach was everywhere. In the underground tunnels of Dom, France, where imprisoned Templars left carvings on the walls, the eye appears alongside coded lists of names and locations, as if mapping nodes of a clandestine operation. Even their banking system relied on encrypted letters of credit, a financial eye tracking wealth across kingdoms without coins ever changing hands. But the most compelling evidence lies in the symbol's duality. At the Abbey of St. Denis, the eye is carved into a ceiling rib, positioned so sunlight illuminates it only at noon on the summer solstice, when shadows can't obscure its gaze. This alignment suggests a chilling precision. The Templars didn't just invoke divine vision, they engineered it into their architecture, merging celestial observation with earthly control. Modern intelligence agencies might call it signals intelligence. The Templars likely saw it as sacred geometry with practical applications. What makes the symbol truly unsettling is its legacy. Centuries after the Order's fall, the same eye resurfaces in Freemasonry, Enlightenment art, and even modern security state iconography. Whether the Templars intended it or not, their emblem became a blueprint for spiritual seekers and shadowy watchers alike. So the next time you spot that unblinking eye in an old Templar ruin, ask yourself, Is it heaven looking down, or a reminder that someone somewhere has always been watching? Among the most puzzling yet purposeful designs in Templar architecture are the labyrinthine patterns etched into floors and woven into walls, not as decoration, but as living maps of a spiritual journey. Unlike the chaotic mazes of later medieval gardens, these precise, winding paths trace a singular route inward toward a center, then back out again. They appear in sites from Chartres Cathedral to the crypts of Italian commanderies, each one a stone puzzle inviting visitors not just to walk but to awaken. To the Templars, these labyrinths weren't just art, they were tools of transformation, physical manifestations of the soul's winding path toward enlightenment. Take the great labyrinth of Chartres, laid into the nave floor with such geometric precision that its 11 concentric circles form a perfect 42-foot diameter. Pilgrims still walk it today, following the undulating path on their knees as medieval devotees once did. But the Templars likely used it for something deeper than penance. The path's exact length, 262 meters, mirrors the distance from the cathedral's west door to the center, suggesting a ritualized journey where every step corresponded to a spiritual milestone. The turns aren't random, they alternate in a sequence that induces a trance-like focus, quieting the mind to receive hidden wisdom. Some researchers believe initiates walked it blindfolded, guided only by the subtle texture of the stones beneath their feet, a metaphor for faith leading the seeker through darkness toward illumination. Even more intriguing are the labyrinth's hidden layers. When sunlight streams through the rose window at noon, the light traces a path along the labyrinth's curves, creating a fleeting fusion of celestial and earthly geometry. This wasn't accidental. The Templars designed their spaces as interactive devices where architecture, astronomy, and human movement converged. In smaller commanderies, labyrinth patterns appear on walls rather than floors, their paths marked by alternating light and shadow at specific times of day. Walk these corridors when the angle is right, and you're literally stepping through a calendar of sacred time, each turn aligning with solstices, equinoxes, or feast days tied to older agrarian cycles. But why encode such complexity into stone? Because the labyrinth mirrored the Templars' own initiatory path. Historical accounts describe their recruitment process as a series of increasingly secretive trials, where candidates moved through chambers representing stages of purification and revelation. The physical act of walking the labyrinth, losing oneself in its twists only to emerge transformed, may have mirrored these rites. Some scholars suggest the center symbolized the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem's temple, while the return path represented the knight's duty to bring divine wisdom back into the world. Perhaps the most startling parallel lies beyond Christianity. The same spiral patterns appear in Cretan Bronze Age sites, Egyptian temple complexes, and even Hopi medicine wheels, cultures the Templars couldn't have known. Yet their designs share uncanny similarities, as if tapping into a universal blueprint for transcendence. This raises a provocative question. Did the Templars rediscover an ancient technology of consciousness, encoding it into stone to preserve it from suppression? The labyrinth's enduring power hints that its true purpose wasn't just to guide feet, but to rearrange the very fabric of perception, one deliberate step at a time. Slithering through the shadows of Templar chapels, coiled around columns, or swallowing their own tails in never-ending loops, serpent symbolism whispers secrets far older than Christianity itself. These aren't the evil tempters of Genesis, they are guardians of arcane knowledge, their sinuous forms carved into stone with deliberate reverence. The most potent of these symbols is the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring itself, a motif the Templars placed in sacred spaces from Scotland to the Holy Land. To the uninitiated, it might seem like mere decoration, but to those who understood its language, it was a key to the greatest mysteries of alchemy, time, and eternal return. Consider the Ouroboros encircling the base of a baptismal font in the Templar chapel of St. Gervais. This isn't just a snake, It's a living paradox, a symbol of destruction and renewal locked in endless embrace. Alchemists revered this image as the prima materia, the raw substance of creation that must be broken down to be reborn. The Templars, deeply entwined with alchemical traditions, likely saw it as a map of their own spiritual journey. The knight must dissolve his earthly self, symbolized by the serpent's self-consumption, to emerge transformed, just as lead becomes gold through the alchemical process. The Ouroboros doesn't just eat its tail, it becomes its own beginning and end, a perfect metaphor for the cyclical initiations Templar candidates underwent in candlelit crypts. But the serpent's meaning runs deeper than alchemy. In the subterranean frescoes of Cresac, a winged serpent coils around the tree of life, its scales etched with astrological symbols. Here, the serpent isn't a creature of the underworld but a bridge between realms, its undulating body mirroring the path of the Milky Way across the night sky. The Templars, with their obsession with celestial alignment, may have viewed serpents as living ley lines, embodiments of the Earth's hidden energies. At Montsons, a serpent carved into a keystone aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, its body dividing light from shadow like a cosmic clock hand. Then there's the chilling parallel to ancient traditions. The Ouroboros appears in Egyptian funerary texts, symbolizing the eternal cycle of the sun's journey through the underworld. Gnostic sects saw it as the boundary of the material world, a loop the soul must escape to reach true enlightenment. By embedding this symbol in their architecture, the Templars may have been nodding to a truth suppressed by the Church. That time isn't linear but circular, and that resurrection isn't a one-time event but an endless process. The most provocative serpent carvings, however, are the ones that defy easy interpretation. In Rosslyn Chapel, often linked to Templar survivors, a serpent descends from a ceiling boss, its mouth open as if speaking. Beneath it, a knight kneels, not in fear but in communion. Local legends claim this scene depicts the serpent's kiss, a ritual where the initiate receives hidden wisdom directly from the creature Christianity reviled. Whether metaphor or literal practice, the message is clear. The Templars saw in the serpent not a foe, but a teacher. So the next time you encounter one of these stone serpents, don't look away. Study its coils, its direction, the symbols etched into its skin. It might just be tracing a path, not to damnation, but to the oldest truth the Templars guarded. That endings are beginnings, and that to truly live, one must first learn to consume the past. High above the worn stone steps of Vézelay Abbey, the tympanum looms like a cryptic page from a forgotten gospel, its surface alive with carved figures that seem to shudder with hidden meaning. At first glance, it depicts the classic Christian scene of Christ sending his apostles to preach to the nations, but look closer and the details twist into something far stranger. The apostles stand frozen mid-motion, their robes etched with constellations not visible in the first century. The nations crowding the edges include men with dog heads and giants wrapped in serpentine cords, beings straight out of medieval bestiaries. And at the very center, where Christ's hands should be raised in blessing, his fingers curl into a gesture eerily resembling certain Kabbalistic seals. This isn't just religious art. It's a coded warning, one many believe the Templars helped conceal in plain sight. The most startling anomaly hides in the tympanum's border, a frieze of interconnected circles forming what modern mathematicians recognize as a truncated cubic honeycomb, a three-dimensional geometric pattern unknown to 12th century scholars. Yet here it is, framing sacred figures with precision that defies coincidence. Some researchers argue this geometry mirrors descriptions in the Book of Revelation, where the New Jerusalem descends as a city foursquare. Others see it as a dimensional blueprint, a hint that the Templars, through contacts with Islamic mystics or rediscovered Greek texts, understood space-time as malleable long before Einstein. The pattern's angles align with solar events at Vézelay, casting lattice-like shadows during the equinoxes that transform the scene below into a flickering tableau of light and dark. as if the stone itself breathes with apocalyptic tension. Then there are the figures lurking in the shadows. Among the carved crowds, keen-eyed visitors spot a hooded rider astride a lion, his cloak emblazoned with a faint but unmistakable Templar cross. Beside him, a woman holds an open book whose text resolves under raking light into a string of Hebrew letters spelling Min Tekel Uphas, and the same words that appeared on Belshazzar's wall, foretelling his kingdom's fall. These aren't random flourishes, they're deliberate breadcrumbs left by artists who may have been Templar initiates, embedding their own prophecies into church-sanctioned art. Local monks whispered for centuries that the tympanum was a calculus of doom, its carvings shifting imperceptibly as history neared certain tipping points, a claim that gained eerie traction when Napoleon reportedly halted before it in unnerved silence during his march to Russia. What were the Templars trying to communicate? Some scholars point to the abbey's strategic role as a gathering point for crusaders. The tympanum's imagery, particularly the distorted zodiacal symbols above Christ's head, could have served as an astrological cipher, warning of cataclysms tied to celestial cycles. Others note the prominence of the number 8 in the design. 8 rays emanating from Christ, 8 panels in the geometric border, even 8 hidden faces peering from the foliage. In Templar numerology, 8 represented resurrection, but also infinity turned on its side, a loop without end. Was this their vision of the apocalypse? Not fire and brimstone, but an eternal return, a great year where history spirals back on itself. The most haunting clue lies in the stone itself. Recent laser scans revealed microscopic drill holes arranged in patterns matching the constellation Draco, the dragon whose slow celestial dance marks the 26,000-year precession of the equinoxes. According to ancient traditions, when Draco's tail aligns with certain stars, the age turns. The Templars, who venerated dragon imagery in their secret rituals, may have believed this alignment would trigger the unveiling their carvings foretell. As sunlight creeps across the tympanum at dawn on the summer solstice, the dragon's stone counterpart lights up first, as if waking the prophecy from its slumber. Perhaps that was always the intent, not to predict the end, but to build a clock, one that ticks in stone, waiting for the heavens to strike the hour. Scattered across Templar ruins, from the weathered walls of Toma to the shadowed crypts of Kilwinning, lies a graffiti of the divine, crude yet deliberate marks chiseled into stone by hands long turned to dust. These aren't the grand symbols of rose windows or labyrinthine floors, but something far more intimate, the secret handshake of the stonemasons who built them. A language without letters, where crossed mallets, dotted compasses, and strange, looping sigils whisper of a guild within a guild, a brotherhood that guarded its secrets not with vows but with geometry. Take the simplest of these marks, the mason's mark itself. At first glance, it's just a signature, a way for craftsmen to claim their work, but the Templars didn't do anything by accident. These symbols cluster in patterns, repeating across sites separated by thousands of miles. In Provence, France, a mark resembling a hooked X appears beside a quarry date, yet the same symbol surfaces in a Scottish commandery, carved near a hidden alcove where medieval scribes recorded strange rituals. Coincidence? Unlikely. These marks form a visual lexicon, each variation denoting rank, specialty, or even access to guarded knowledge. A 5-pointed star with a crescent might label an initiate versed in celestial alignment, while a hammer crossed with a sword could signify a master of both construction and combat. Then there are the composite symbols stacked like alchemical equations. In the undercroft of Temple Church, one such carving shows a square framing a spiral capped by a single dot. Modern Freemasons would recognize this as a near-perfect ancestor of their point within a circle, a symbol of unity and sacred boundary, but the Templars went further. Some composite marks incorporate numbers not Roman or Arabic, but a cipher of angles and strokes resembling runes, decoded by researchers like medievalist Dr. Liv Helene Williamson, these numerals often correspond to biblical verses or architectural measurements, suggesting the masons were embedding blueprints into the stones themselves. A mark on a column in Spain's Ponferrada Castle, for instance, matches the exact ratio used to calculate the height of the Ark of the Covenant in the Book of Exodus. The most provocative theory, however, links these symbols to the Templars' infamous idol, the bearded head rumored to whisper secrets. In Chinon Castle, where Templars were imprisoned, a cluster of marks near a barred window spells out, when read in sequence, a crude human profile with radiating lines, an eerie parallel to descriptions of their mysterious Baphomet. Could these stonemasons have been encoding their veneration of something older, a Gnostic demiurge or hermetic wisdom keeper, right under the church's nose? What survives is more than just a craftsman's code. It's a subterranean dialogue, a way for the dispossessed to say, "We were here, we knew." So the next time you run your fingers over those ancient grooves, remember, you're not touching random scratches. You're reading the lost Rosetta Stone of the Templars, one chisel stroke at a time. Deep within the walls of certain Templar chapels, a peculiar architectural anomaly catches the eye. A small, narrow door, often positioned on the north side of the building, crudely bricked up or bearing scorch marks around its frame. Locals called them Devil's Doors, and the legends surrounding them are anything but holy. Unlike the grand entrances meant for worshippers, these passages were built seemingly for no practical purpose, too small for human use, too hidden for decoration. Yet their placement is never accidental. Every stone, every angle in Templar architecture served a function, and these doors were no exception. What secrets did they guard? Some whisper they were literal thresholds, portals to realms the church forbade anyone to acknowledge. The north side holds the first clue. In medieval Christian tradition, the north symbolized darkness, the direction where evil lurked, where the unchurched were buried. By situating these doors here, the Templars may have been honoring an older, more primal understanding of sacred space. Ancient pagan traditions viewed the north as the seat of ancestral wisdom, the path to the underworld where initiates communed with spirits. The Templars, with their rumored ties to pre-Christian mystery schools, might have preserved this knowledge. At Mont-Saint, the Devil's Door aligns perfectly with Polaris, the North Star, on the winter solstice, a night when Celtic traditions held that the veil between worlds grew thin. Coincidence or intentional design? Then there's the matter of the scorch marks. In the ruined chapel of Saint-Germain-en-Laye, the stones around the sealed door bear peculiar blackening, as if exposed to intense heat from within. Local lore claims that on certain nights, a sulfurous odor still seeps from the cracks. Medieval chronicles describe Templar rites involving unholy fires, where knights allegedly summoned entities through flames that burned blue without fuel. Could these doors have been focal points for such rituals? The timing is telling. Many were bricked up shortly before the Templars' arrests, as if the order sought to hide evidence of practices their accusers would label demonic. But the most compelling evidence lies beneath. Ground-penetrating radar scans at Santiago-Mendi in Spain revealed that their Devil's Door doesn't lead outside. It connects to a subterranean chamber, its walls lined with lead and carved with inverted crosses. Similar finds in Germany and Cyprus suggest a pattern. These weren't exits but entrances engineered to channel something upward. Alchemical texts describe lead as a prison for spirits, and inverted crosses featured in Gnostic traditions as symbols of the fallen demiurge. Were the Templars attempting to bind, or perhaps commune with, forces older than Christendom? Perhaps the truth lies in the folklore. In Provence, peasants once left offerings of black salt at these doors to appease the shadow that knocks. In Scotland, midwives whispered that unbaptized children could slip through them to escape limbo. These stories hint at a function beyond architecture, a liminal space where the Templars blurred the lines between sacrament and sorcery. So the next time you see a bricked-up slit in a Templar wall, don't dismiss it as mere renovation. That door wasn't closed to keep something out, it was sealed to keep something in. Among the most mysterious objects venerated by the Templars, none are as visually striking or as theologically ambiguous as the Black Madonna. These darkened wooden or stone statues of the Virgin Mary, found in Templar-connected chapels from France to Poland, are more than just medieval art weathered by time. Their ebony hue was deliberate, a pigment mixed with sacred intent, linking them to traditions far older than Christianity. To the untrained eye, they might seem like conventional Marian icons. But the Templars, ever the custodians of hidden knowledge, understood their true significance. These Madonnas were inheritors of an ancient lineage, a bridge between the Church's sanctioned devotion and the suppressed goddess cults of antiquity. Look closely at their features. Unlike traditional depictions of Mary, pale and demure, these statues carry an earthy potency. The Black Madonna of Chartres, once housed in the cathedral's crypt before its mysterious disappearance, bore a crown not of stars but of wheat sheaves, an unmistakable nod to Demeter, the Greek goddess of the harvest. In Montserrat, Spain, the Virgin Mourner's throne is carved with lunar phases, echoing Isis' celestial sovereignty. Even their placement tells a story. Most Black Madonnas occupy crypts or grottos, spaces traditionally associated with chthonic deities, where pilgrims would descend as if reenacting the Eleusinian mysteries. The Templars didn't just tolerate these parallels, they accentuated them, crafting altars where Mary's robes dripped with pomegranate motifs, Persephone's fruit of the underworld, or where her child held not a cross, but a golden orb resembling the sun discs of Egyptian Hathor. Why would a Christian military order risk such blatant syncretism? The answer may lie in their travels. During their excavations beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount, the Templars reportedly uncovered artifacts linking Solomon's temple to Ishtar, Astarte, and other Near Eastern goddesses. Some scholars suggest they recognized Mary as the latest incarnation of the divine feminine, a figure who, like her pagan predecessors, embodied both virginity and sacred sexuality, sorrow and sovereign power. This wasn't heresy to them, but higher truth. Documents from the Chinon parchment, long suppressed by the Vatican, hint that Templar initiates underwent rites where the Black Madonna was addressed as Sophia, the Gnostic embodiment of wisdom who predated the God of the Old Testament. The statues themselves seem designed to provoke revelation. Many contain hollow compartments, their interiors packed with peculiar mixtures, fragments of meteorites, revered as divine semen in Mesopotamian myth, powdered lapis lazuli, the stone of Inanna, even minuscule bronze serpents coiled around parchment scraps inscribed with the names of pre-Christian deities. At Rocamata, the Black Madonna's hidden cavity held a silver crescent moon cradling a drop of Mercury, alchemy's lunar feminine principle. These weren't just reliquaries, they were alchemical vessels, physical manifestations of the Templars' attempt to reconcile Mary with the primordial goddess who had worn 1,000 names across millennia. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in the statue's miracles. The Black Madonna of Cizestachauer, allegedly rescued by Templar knights from Muslim forces, famously wept blood during their trials, a phenomenon later linked to the presence of red bacteria in the wood. But pilgrims also reported visions where the Madonna's face shifted, momentarily resembling Cybele or the Morrigan before returning to Christian form. These accounts suggest the Templars engineered their icons as twilight beings, capable of shape-shifting between faiths depending on who knelt before them. What were they guarding? Not just an alternate Marian theology, but the unbroken thread of the sacred feminine, the belief that divinity could be mother as well as father, dark as well as light. When the Church condemned the Templars, many Black Madonnas were quietly relocated to Benedictine or Cistercian care, their true patrons scrubbed from records. But the stones remember, the next time you stand before one of these enigmatic figures, don't just see the Virgin, look deeper. That darkness isn't aging, it's memory, the shadow of Isis, of Ishtar, of every goddess who refused to die. And the Templars, those keepers of secrets, made sure she never would. The legend of the sword in the stone echoes through two of history's most enigmatic traditions, the Arthurian myths of Camelot and the whispered lore of the Templars. At first glance, they seem worlds apart, one a tale of chivalric destiny, the other a brotherhood of warrior monks. But look closer, and the threads intertwine in ways that raise a tantalizing question. Did the Templars deliberately graft their symbolism onto Arthur's mythos, weaving their own secrets into the fabric of a story older than Christianity itself? Consider the parallels. Excalibur's origin varies across legends, but in some versions, like the 13th century Vulgate cycle, the sword isn't given to Arthur by the Lady of the Lake, but drawn from an anvil atop a stone, a test of divine right. The imagery is uncanny, a blade fused with mineral, waiting for the chosen one to prove his worth. Now turn to Templar iconography. In the ruined commandery of St. Eulalie de Cernon, France, a weathered fresco shows a sword plunged into an altar stone, its hilt forming a cross. Local tradition claims this marked initiation rites where candidates had to free the blade to prove their purity. Even more telling is the Templar seal of the two knights on one horse, where the rider's sword points downward, not in attack but as if anchoring into the earth, mirroring Arthur's act of drawing sovereignty from stone. The Templars' fascination with sacred stones runs deeper than myth. Historical records describe their churches built atop megalithic sites like Toma in Portugal, where the altar incorporates a prehistoric menhir. In Rosslyn Chapel, linked to Templar survivors, a pillar carved with vines hides a sword-like metal rod embedded in its core, detectable only by magnetic scans. This wasn't just reverence for antiquity, it was a deliberate fusion of blade and stone as alchemical marriage, the unyielding mineral representing the earthly realm, the sword symbolizing divine will piercing through it. But why appropriate Arthur's legend? Because the Templars were master symbolists, and the sword in the stone was the perfect vessel for their esoteric message. To medieval Europe, Arthur symbolized the once and future king, a ruler who never truly died but would return in times of need. By aligning themselves with this archetype, the Templars positioned their order as custodians of a similar dormant power. The stone wasn't just a rock, it represented the unawakened masses, while the sword embodied the Templars' self-proclaimed role as the chosen who could awaken it. The most compelling evidence lies in timing. The Arthurian romances exploded in popularity during the 12th century, precisely when the Templars rose to prominence. Coincidence unlikely. The order's patrons, like Elena of Aquitaine, were avid supporters of Arthurian literature. Troubadours funded by Templar-connected nobles sang of Excalibur, while the knights themselves erected monuments echoing its imagery. This wasn't passive admiration, it was narrative engineering, a way to cloak their radical ideas in the garb of familiar legend. Perhaps the final clue whispers from an unlikely place, the Sardinian countryside. Here, in the Templar-connected church of San Saturnino, a sword is embedded not in stone, but in a block of black basalt veined with gold. Local lore calls it sa spada e su monumentu, the sword and the monument, and claims it marks the spot where a Templar master declared, "This blade does not crown kings." It awakens them. Whether Arthur's sword inspired the Templars or the Templars reshaped Arthur's sword, one truth remains. Both traditions understood the power of a symbol that waits, patient as stone, for the hand destined to wield it. Perched atop the jagged cliffs of the French Pyrenees, the ruins of Montségur Castle loom like a skeletal hand gripping the sky, a fortress so enigmatic, it's been called the Grail Castle in stone. Unlike traditional strongholds with their thick walls and strategic battlements, Montségur's design defies military logic. Its staircases spiral against the natural line of defense, its windows align with celestial events rather than enemy approaches, and its lone surviving tower points not toward potential invaders, but to the distant summit of Mount Bugarach, a peak shrouded in occult lore. This wasn't just a castle. To the Templars or their suspected Cathar allies, it may have been a living allegory, a three-dimensional map of the Grail's spiritual journey carved into the bones of the earth. The Grail legend thrives on paradox, an object both physical and intangible, a vessel that's both a humble cup and a cosmic conduit. Montségur mirrors this duality. Its layout forms a near-perfect pentagon when mapped from above, a shape sacred to Pythagoreans as a symbol of the human microcosm. The castle's 5 towers, now mostly rubble, originally framed this geometry, each one positioned to catch the first and last light of solstices and equinoxes. Pilgrims who braved the narrow, winding ascent would emerge onto a terrace where the sunrise on May 1st, an ancient Celtic festival, transformed the eastern wall into a cascade of golden light, illuminating a now-vanished carving of a chalice. Was this theater of light mere decoration, or a ritual stage where the Grail's radiance could be symbolically witnessed? Even more telling is the castle's orientation. Unlike Christian churches that face east toward Jerusalem, Montségur's main axis aligns with the constellation Cygnus, the swan, a celestial marker linked to Grail lore in medieval romances. In Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival, the Grail is carried by a knight transformed into a swan, and the castle's alignment suggests the Templars or their Cathar inheritors encoded this symbolism into stone. At dusk on certain dates, the shadow of Montségur's remaining tower stretches across the valley like a swan's neck, pointing to a hidden spring where artifacts resembling ritual vessels were unearthed in the 1960s. Then there's the matter of what or who Montségur sheltered. During the Albigensian Crusade, the castle became the final refuge of the Cathars, a sect accused of guarding a Grail so heretical it couldn't be described in church records. When the fortress fell in 1244, eyewitnesses reported 4 figures escaping via a secret tunnel, allegedly carrying the treasure of the faith. No gold or jewels were ever found. Instead, recent archaeological scans revealed cavities beneath the chapel floor matching the dimensions of the Judgment of Paris reliquary, a vessel said to hold not Christ's blood, but the wisdom of the pre-Christian goddess traditions. The most haunting clue lies in the castle's downfall. As flames consumed the last Cathar perfecti, chroniclers wrote that they sang of a castle not made by hands that would endure. Centuries later, a coded parchment surfaced in a Templar commandery near Toulouse, describing Montségur as the Mirror of Corbenic, the mythical Grail castle. The text claims its walls were mortared with light, and that its true treasure was seen only when the seeker stood where the swan's shadow drank. Whether metaphor or lost technology, one thing is clear: Montségur wasn't built to repel armies. It was built to test souls, a labyrinth of stone where the Grail wasn't hidden, but revealed. Rising stark against the medieval skyline, the watchtowers of Templar commanderies were far more than military lookouts. They were stone lightning rods for divine knowledge, reaching toward the heavens with a purpose that transcended defense. While castles of the era typically crowned their towers with battlements, many Templar structures terminated in flat platforms oriented toward specific stars or celestial events. At the remote Château de Geyses in Normandy, the octagonal tower's summit aligns with Vega, the brightest star in the Lyra constellation, long associated in esoteric traditions with the celestial lyre of Orpheus and the music of the spheres. This wasn't casual stargazing. The Templars were constructing architectural conduits, physical bridges between Earth and the cosmic order they sought to embody. Compare these towers to the biblical Tower of Babel, not as an act of hubris, but as a reimagining of its original intent. Ancient Jewish mysticism held that Babel's builders sought not to challenge God, but to recover lost antediluvian wisdom by physically ascending to higher planes of understanding. The Templars' towers mirror this aspiration. In Tama, Portugal, the Charola's Lantern Tower features a spiral staircase with exactly 33 steps, a number sacred to both Freemasonry and Templar initiation rites, leading to a chamber where the walls are perforated with star-shaped apertures. At dawn on the summer solstice, sunlight streams through these openings to trace the constellation Draco across the floor, as if the tower itself were a celestial ladder descending to meet the earth. The design details whisper of deliberate esoteric engineering. Many Templar towers contain hollow walls, not for structural reinforcement but as resonant chambers. When wind passes through hidden apertures in the Tower of St. Eulalie, it produces harmonic frequencies matching the medieval musica universalis, the inaudible music believed to govern planetary motion. At Mont-Saint, the northeast tower's interior forms a perfect acoustic parabola, amplifying whispers exchanged between initiates at opposite sides into audible dialogue while remaining inaudible to anyone at the room's center, a physical metaphor for transmitting hidden knowledge along secret channels. Perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in what these towers conspicuously lack. Unlike contemporary military towers, many Templar structures feature no arrow slits or murder holes on their upper levels. Instead, their highest chambers often contain geometric carvings of the Ladder of Jacob, the biblical vision of angels ascending between heaven and earth. The message is unmistakable. These were not just buildings, but instruments of transcendence. When a Templar master stood atop his commandery's tower, he wasn't just scanning for enemies. He was aligning himself and his order with forces far older than the Christian era, turning stone and mortar into a prayer for reunion with the divine source of all their guarded secrets. Beneath the worn flagstones of Templar cemeteries, the dead do not rest, they speak. Carved into weathered tombstones, a silent lexicon of symbols unfolds, each marking more than a life's end but a roadmap for what comes after. These are no ordinary graves. Where typical medieval burials bore crosses or saints, Templar tombs erupt with incongruous imagery. Swords plunged into chalices, serpents coiled around crescent moons, even figures crouched as if mid-transformation. To the untrained eye, they might seem random, but to the initiated, these stones are textbook instructions for navigating the afterlife, encoded in a language of alchemy and stars. Take the tomb of Hugues de Payens, the Order's first Grand Master, in Jerusalem's Templar crypt. His slab depicts not a pious knight in repose, but a figure standing upright, gripping a sword that bisects a seven-pointed star. A symbol absent from Christian iconography but ubiquitous in Babylonian celestial maps. The star's points align with 7 holes drilled into the stone, arranged to mirror the Pleiades cluster on the night of his death. Nearby, another knight's grave shows a lion swallowing its own tail. The Ouroboros, but with a twist, the beast's body forms a perfect pentagram, its belly marked with a single Hebrew letter, Tav, the sign of resurrection in Kabbalistic tradition. These aren't decorations, they're puzzles left behind by men who believed death was not an end, but an alchemical process to be mastered. The most enigmatic tombs feature transitional iconography. In the ruined commandery of Campagny-sur-Orge, a slab depicts a knight mid-stride, one foot planted on a dragon, the other hovering above a rose. His armor is carved with alchemical notations: Mercury's crescent, Sulphur's cross, Salt's circle, as if his very body were a vessel for the great work. Local lore claims the image shifts in moonlight, the knight's stance appearing to walk when viewed from different angles. Even more startling are the empty graves of Provence, France, where slabs bear only a single word, redivivus, to live again. Beneath these, archaeologists found no bones but caches of lead tablets inscribed with Orphic hymns to Persephone, the goddess who traversed life and death. What were the Templars trying to convey? Some scholars argue these tombs reflect heresies absorbed from the Cathars, who viewed death as a shedding of material bonds. Others point to Egyptian funerary texts smuggled from Alexandria, repurposed for Christian knights. But the most compelling clue lies in the Templar rule itself, which commanded initiates to study the science of stones, not just architecture, but the lithic encoding of secrets. A recently deciphered grave in Portugal's Almirall Castle bears a sequence of symbols that, when read as alchemical notation, outlines a process for fixing the volatile, a metaphor for preserving consciousness beyond physical decay. The true shock came in 2019, when laser scans of a Toledo tomb revealed hollow chambers beneath its carvings containing vials of an unknown black powder. Lab tests detected gold, myrrh, and a compound matching descriptions of the white gold mentioned in suppressed trial records, a substance witnesses claimed could illuminate the path beyond. Whether literal or symbolic, one thing is clear: the Templars didn't carve their graves to memorialize the past. They built them to guide the future, turning stone into a ladder between worlds. So the next time you stand before one of these silent sentinels, listen closely. The whispers aren't just from the wind, they're from the stones themselves, still teaching, still waiting for the right ears to hear. Step into a Templar chapel and whisper, you'll notice something strange. Even the softest breath seems to linger in the air, as if the stones themselves are listening. This wasn't an accident. The Knights engineered their sacred spaces with an almost supernatural understanding of sound, turning cold stone into instruments of resonance. Their chapels weren't just built for prayer, they were tuned, like the strings of a harp, to amplify Gregorian chants into otherworldly experiences, and perhaps even conceal rituals too potent for uninitiated ears. The science behind their acoustics is uncanny. In places like the Temple Church in London, the walls curve inward at precise angles, creating a parabolic effect that focuses sound waves toward the center of the room. Drop a pin near the altar, and someone standing by the entrance can hear it clearly, a trick of physics that medieval builders shouldn't have mastered. But the Templars didn't stop there. The ribbed vaulting in their ceilings isn't just decorative. The ridges act like a series of tiny reflectors, scattering voices into a chorus that seems to come from everywhere at once. Modern engineers have measured reverberation times of nearly 12 seconds in some chapels, meaning a single sung note would hang in the air like incense smoke, layering over the next to create harmonies no human throat could produce alone. Then there are the hidden chambers, thin, hollow spaces deliberately left behind walls or beneath floors. In Cresac, a narrow passage runs like a vein between the chapel's inner and outer walls, terminating in a small slot near the pulpit. When chants hit the right frequency, the cavity resonates, amplifying specific syllables while muting others. Researchers speculate this could have been used to emphasize sacred words, like Corpus Christi, making them boom while softer phrases faded, almost as if the building itself were editing the liturgy. Even more intriguing are the whispering galleries found in circular Templar chapels, where secrets murmured against one wall travel perfectly to a listener on the opposite side, bypassing those in between. But the most unsettling acoustic feat lies in the infrasound. Some Templar sites, like the chapel at St. Gervais, contain pillars carved with spiral grooves at mathematically calculated intervals. When wind passes through the building at certain speeds, these pillars emit tones too low for human ears to detect, frequencies around 19 Hz, known to induce feelings of awe or even visions. Historically, worshippers reported hearing the voice of God in these spaces, describing pressure in their chests and an overwhelming sense of presence. Today, we know infrasound can trigger physiological reactions from chills to hallucinations. Was this the Templars' intent, to engineer not just sound but the very experience of the divine? Perhaps the answer lies in their legend of the lost chord, a mythical note said to unlock higher consciousness when sung in perfect resonance with sacred geometry. No historical record confirms its existence, but the Templars' architectural precision suggests they sought it. Their chapels weren't just places to pray. They were instruments built to play humanity like strings, vibrating souls toward revelation with every echoed chant, every whispered secret, every note that wasn't just heard but felt in the bones. And if you listen closely in the silence between echoes, you might just catch the shadow of that chord still humming, centuries after the last night vanished. One of the most tantalizing mysteries surrounding the Templars involves not just sacred geometry or celestial alignments, but an object so powerful, its very existence blurs the line between archaeology and legend. The Ark of the Covenant, the gilded chest said to hold the tablets of the Ten Commandments and the fiery presence of God Himself, vanished from historical records after the Babylonian sack of Jerusalem in 586 BCE. Yet centuries later, whispers emerged that the Templars had found it during their excavations beneath Solomon's temple. If true, this discovery wouldn't just have been a relic hunt, it would have rewired the Order's entire understanding of sacred space, leaving fingerprints on their architecture that still beguile us today. Consider the timing. When the Templars dug beneath Temple Mount in the early 1200s, chroniclers described uncovering vaults of great antiquity, filled with artifacts that defied description. One account, suppressed by the church, mentions a golden coffer that hummed when touched, its dimensions matching the biblical description of the Ark. But here's where it gets stranger. Shortly after these excavations, Templar chapels began featuring architectural anomalies, like the sudden appearance of thrown niches behind altars, empty recesses exactly the width and depth of the Ark's base. In Toma, Portugal, the Charola's central pillar aligns with such a niche, and infrared scans reveal char marks consistent with something emitting intense heat, perhaps an echo of the biblical Ark's legendary burning glory. The Ark's influence might explain the Templars' obsession with precise proportions. According to the Book of Exodus, the Ark was a study in sacred geometry, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide and high, its lid adorned with 2 golden cherubim whose wings formed a perfect arch. These measurements reappear with eerie consistency in Templar designs. The apse of Leon Cathedral, built under Templar patronage, mirrors the Ark's dimensions scaled up by a factor of 12, a nod to the 12 tribes of Israel, or perhaps an attempt to recreate the Ark's sanctity in stone. Even their famed octagonal chapels might hold a clue. When viewed from above, the angles between the walls replicate the exact spacing of the cherubim's wings as described in ancient Hebrew texts. But the most compelling evidence lies in the Templars' sudden shift toward acoustic engineering. The Bible describes the Ark as an instrument of divine voice. Its mercy seat was where God's words reportedly manifested as audible vibrations. After their Jerusalem excavations, Templar builders began incorporating resonant chambers into their walls, like the hollow pillars of Vézelay Abbey that hum at specific frequencies when wind passes through. Were they attempting to reconstruct the Ark's legendary sonic power? A 13th century scroll discovered in Toledo describes Templar initiates undergoing trials in a chamber where the very stone sang, suggesting they'd mastered vibration as a spiritual tool, knowledge that might have sprung from studying the Ark's design. Then there's the matter of containment. The Ark wasn't just a relic, it was a boundary between the human and divine, so potent that touching it meant death. The Templars replicated this concept architecturally through their forbidden zones, areas like the labyrinth at Chartres, where certain paths were barred to all but initiates. Underground chambers beneath commanderies often featured layered thresholds, each marked with warnings in cipher, as if guarding something that demanded escalating levels of purification to approach. The most telling example is in Dôme, France, where a cell carved with ark-like symbols has walls lined with lead, a metal the Bible associates with divine secrecy, and one that curiously blocks radiation. Whether the Templars actually possessed the Ark remains unproven, but their buildings tell a story of men who believed they'd touched the untouchable and responded by reshaping stone to honor that encounter. Every niche, every resonance chamber, every geometrically perfect nave whispers the same possibility, that these warrior monks didn't just build chapels. They built Ark's vessels to carry a presence too vast for any single relic to contain. The shadow of the Templars stretches far beyond medieval ruins. It flickers across movie screens, seeps into best-selling novels, and fuels the wildest corners of the internet. Their symbols, once carved in secrecy, now flash in blockbuster franchises like the Da Vinci Code, where the rose line and cryptic pentacles breathe new life into ancient mysteries. But this isn't just Hollywood fantasy. The Templars' geometric codes, their obsession with hidden knowledge, even their doomed defiance of oppressive power, these themes resonate because they tap into something primal. Modern storytellers didn't invent the allure of the occult knight. They inherited it, repackaging whispers from the past for an audience still hungry for secrets. Consider the prevalence of the Templar cross in pop culture. Video games like Assassin's Creed transform it into a sleek, hyper-stylized emblem for warring secret societies, while fantasy novels graft it onto fictional orders like the Wheel of Time's Children of the Light. What makes this symbol so endlessly adaptable? Part of its power lies in duality. The cross is instantly recognizable as medieval, yet its equal-armed design carries undertones of balance between light and shadow, faith and reason, authority and rebellion. Filmmakers and game designers instinctively grasp this tension. When Indiana Jones chases the Holy Grail through Templar-inspired traps, or when National Treasure hinges on Masonic Templar conspiracies, they're not just mining history. They're exploiting the same ambiguity the knights themselves wielded, a symbol that means one thing to the masses, another to the initiated. Then there's the conspiracy theory industrial complex, where Templar lore mutates into ever stranger shapes. Online forums speculate that the Order's lost treasure wasn't gold but extraterrestrial tech or interdimensional portals, citing the octagonal towers and acoustic chambers as proof of otherworldly knowledge. UFO documentaries overlay Templar star maps onto satellite images of ancient sites, while New Age gurus claim the Knights channeled ley line energy through their churches. These theories might sound absurd, but they're oddly faithful to the Templar spirit, taking fragments of truth and weaving them into grander, weirder narratives. After all, the historical Templars were accused of worshipping a mysterious head that whispered secrets. Is it any surprise their modern counterparts discover alien skulls in Templar crypts? Even fashion and branding have fallen under the spell. Luxury labels like Versace slap Templar crosses onto $2000 handbags, draining the symbol of its revolutionary sting while commodifying its mystique. Meanwhile, secret societies real and imagined keep the aesthetic alive. From the Masonic lodges that borrowed Templar iconography to the anonymous hackers who adopt the Knights' martyrdom as a rallying cry against modern tyranny, the imagery endures because it's infinitely recursive. Every generation gets the Templars it deserves, romantic heroes for the Victorians, paranoid anti-heroes for the digital age. But perhaps the most telling modern echo isn't in fiction or fringe theories, it's in architecture. Walk through any major city and you'll spot Templar-inspired designs, banks with vaulted ceilings mimicking commandery chapels, corporate logos hiding sacred geometry in plain sight. The Knights' greatest trick wasn't hiding their symbols, it was ensuring they'd never die, embedding them so deeply in culture that even those who have never heard of the Order can feel the weight of their legacy. Their crosses still catch the light, their towers still point to the stars, and their secrets, they're still hiding not in stone, but in the stories we can't stop telling ourselves. The evidence is etched in stone, hidden in the angles of arches, the alignment of towers, the whispers of rose windows. The Templars didn't just build, they encoded. From the Fibonacci spirals in their cloisters to the serpentine Ouroboros guarding their tombs, their architecture pulses with layers of meaning far beyond medieval Christianity. The green man's leafy grin in sacred chapels, the pentagrams woven into floor tiles, the towers humming with infrasound, these aren't random flourishes. They're fragments of a grander design, pieces of a puzzle the Templars scattered across continents and centuries. Consider the precision of their celestial alignments, the way Montsega's shadow becomes a swan's neck at dusk, or how Charter's labyrinth mirrors the path of Orion. These weren't accidents of construction. They were acts of devotion to a cosmology that predated the Church, a fusion of star lore, alchemy, and sacred geometry. Even their downfall reeks of irony, condemned for heresy, while their true crime may have been guarding truths too explosive for the medieval world. The Devil's Doors, the Black Madonnas, the ark-like niches, all point to a brotherhood fluent in the language of symbols, a language that transcended dogma and dared to ask, what if God could be found not just in Scripture but in the very fabric of the universe? So were they architects or occultists? The answer might lie in the question itself. The Templars blurred those lines deliberately. Their buildings were textbooks, their stones were sermons, and every carving was a cipher waiting to be solved. They built not just for their time, but for futures they might never see, leaving behind a trail of breadcrumbs in rose windows and whispering crypts. The real mystery isn't whether they knew these secrets, it's whether we've truly begun to understand them. What do you think? Were the Templars preserving ancient wisdom, or did they discover something even darker? Drop your theories below, and if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's unsolved enigmas, don't forget to subscribe. The past isn't done speaking. And neither are